Okay, welcome to Inside Story. I'm your host, Kristen Messagy. This is season 2. We're talking about the inner work for each type so that they can have a different experience, which is going to be different for everybody. So today we are talking to Joe. Joe is a type 9. So Joe, I'm going to let you say more about yourself, however you would like to set us up. Thank you for being here. And I should also say, Joe and I did this before and I screwed up the sound. So I think that's going to serve us well that we already know each other, but we'll see. Thanks for being willing to be here again.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I'm Joe. I'm a type 9. I'm 53 years old. I live in South Florida. Mostly grew up in New York State. Been clean in recovery for 22 years.
That's
Uh,
amazing. That's a long time.
I've been married for 19 years. Have a 17-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. I I've been exploring Enneagram work for about 6 years, and read a number of books and listened to a number of podcasts. And I did some training with the Enneagram Prison Project. And then I have a friend who has run a workshop that I've attended a couple times that tries to correlate 12-step recovery with the Enneagram, which has been some very interesting work.
Can I hear more about what's the Enneagram Prison Project?
It's like out of Berkeley. They teach Enneagram to inmates,
That's
and
amazing.
then when inmates are released, they go back in and teach it to more inmates. They've done it a lot in the San Francisco Bay Area, and they have like a chapter in Minneapolis also. Sorry, there's a plane going overhead. Um, I guess it's closely related to like the narrative school, I would say.
Okay.
They come out of like David Daniels, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, a little sidebar for me. Okay, I'm interested to talk about the Enneagram and 12 step because I also have spent time in steps a long time ago. And I have always felt like there was a ton of overlap in terms of, I'm going to say, some of the more spiritual ways that I see the Enneagram and like the release, right? Like so if we just start with step 1, admitting that we're powerless over something. I think the Enneagram can show us, right, just the parts of our personality that we are not in control of. They're automatic. What do you think about that?
I think absolutely. I think that one of the first books I read was Helen Palmer, and she talks a lot about developing an observer, um, which I think is kind of important to Enneagram work, and I believe like certainly that first step where we admit that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives have become unmanageable. So it's taking an honest look at yourself. I think what makes a lot of sense to me is Enneagram work is maybe most useful with step 6 and 7, which is where you're looking at uh, your defects of character and your shortcomings. So like you become willing to have your defects of character removed, and then you humbly ask for them to be removed. So if you're taking that honest look, these sort of false personality patterns that we can fall into depending upon our type, I think can be similar to examining one's character defects.
Yeah. Okay, this is interesting. So I think It's so interesting. That's probably where and maybe this will be interesting from a 6 perspective and a 9 perspective because or maybe it's just a faith thing, I don't know. So for me, like, a willingness to have my defects removed doesn't resonate with me because I think I have to learn to honestly just live with myself as a whole human. So I think I diverge in that note, but I'm wondering if for a 9, you're not here to speak for all 9s, of course, but how does that tell me about that for you? Like to have something just like whoosh, your defects away. The willingness I will get on board with, right? I would say, oh, yeah, you take it.
Well, no, my understanding from doing step work is that the willingness is maybe the more important part of it because you humbly ask for your shortcomings to be removed, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's any guarantee that they will be removed. It's not like it's a given thing.
That's
It's like,
that's well said. Yeah.
please remove them, and then boom, they're removed. It's not a instant thing. But the idea is, if I'm taking that honest look, the first step is awareness. Like if I'm aware that, okay, I have these patterns of behavior or patterns of thought that are screwing me up.
Yep.
And like I'm willing to consider that maybe I don't want to keep doing that. Maybe there's something else that could happen instead. And then I humbly ask my higher power, whatever that may be, to remove them. But like I
So
said,
it's
that's not a
really
guarantee that they will be removed.
right. Okay, I love what you're saying. Because I think too, when we're caught up in any of our stuff, we generally think our problems are other people's fault, or we go to a very shamey place, which is not a place of accountability. So we're either like, well, I'm this way because of all these external factors,
Right.
or I'm a terrible human, blah, 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 which takes us straight out of the ability to do anything with with ourselves, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're hitting on a point that wasn't obvious to me when I started doing step work, but it's sort of having that higher power element is or a faith element is basically that, like I could sit here and to bring it back to Enneagram, I could read all the books and see what the lower level of nines behaviors are that are detrimental to me integrating or whatever, and then I could sit here and say, okay, I'm going to stop doing that. I'm going to start doing something different. But like when I hold it so tightly, when I put all the
Mm.
responsibility on myself, that okay, I'm going to fix myself, then inevitably I seem to fall back into the same patterns, just maybe in a different way. Like if
Mm.
I don't know if I'm expressing that as clearly as I wanted to, but
What I hear you saying is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I hear you saying is we can decide to fix ourselves, but that becomes another like tight, graspy thing. When what we're really talking about is some kind of true humility,
yeah, or
some
accept
kind of
it.
like, I'm not great at doing things that I necessarily set my mind to because my mind is full of all my stuff. And I don't mean mind, you know what I mean? Our whole selves. Something else has to impact me.
Right.
If it worked the way I was doing it,
Right.
then
I'm trying to think of the metaphor. The metaphor is staying beyond my grasp at the moment, but it's basically like that open-mindedness to help outside of myself, whether it be other people or other systems or a higher power. But it's if I'm expecting to be able to change things that I want to change using the same tools that
got me
made it
here.
happen in the first place. Like how am I
Right.
gonna how am I gonna? The metaphor is escaping me, but you know, how can I fix something with the same tools that created it? You know what I mean?
T- I totally do. Yeah, that's what we need something new, and new means uncertainty. So every type doing their work means confronting whatever the thing that, whatever uncertainty they're most sort of not whole with, you get to confront.
Definitely, that rings
Which is a very
true.
direct 60 way to say it. Okay. So then I find for 9, I just go straight to anger because I
Hmm.
think we all have to work with, around, accept whatever our core emotion is. Our core emotional trouble, let's say. And I've talked to a lot of 9s lately, Joe, and I will say that I've yet to talk to a 9 who is like, "Yes, my anger needs more space in my life." It's just a no. So let's talk about it. And do you agree with me?
I think I agree with you with reservation. You know, like, and I think you know it's the same discussion we had when we did this interview the first time, I'm trying to be a little less resistant to it. But you know, it's
It's just, I just
I
want to say, like, the resistance, of course, it's first, it's primary. So you don't have to be less resistant. We could just keep it theoretical because I really honor that it's like an actually really big deal. It'd be like thing like Kristen, just don't be scared, which is absurd. So take it from there. You don't have to be less resistant, but what are you thinking?
well, I mean, I'm not really resistant. It's I think it is important to look at the primary emotion for each center. I mean, for you, it would be fear, and fear's maybe not always the, you know, that's not always an emotion that I imagine sixes are willing to embrace. They want to talk about, you know, like, because it feels like a shaming kind of thing, I guess. And you know, like with the with the feeling center, it would be shame, right? And with the body center, it would be anger. I think that's a vital part of it. But you know, I feel like it's maybe not all of it, I guess, is what I'm saying. And you know, like when we were talking last time, the suggestion sort of was that you know, all right, I think that some of my some of my skirting anger, or my unwillingness to be in my anger, comes from past experiences where when my anger has gotten free, like I spend a lot of energy bottling my anger, and then when it gets free, it's out of control. And you know, when the anger gets large and out of control, you know, I'm yelling and cursing and making myself look like an idiot, in my opinion, later. And
Right.
and you know, like I don't want to be that person, or you know, like I'm hurting the people I love by
Mm,
yelling at them out of proportion, or you know, making a bad social situation worse. Um, so you know, for me, not to borrow your emotion, but there's like a fear of anger or whatever. You know, like
I think
oh,
that's 100% accurate. Yeah.
so you know, and in some of the other work I've done, like that 12-step workshop, 12, you know, recovery in Enneagram. You know, there have been daily practices, like even just recently, like a few months ago, because I just recently did that workshop for the second time. And one of the ideas I latched upon, because you know there'd be like weekly assignments to practice things, and one of the ideas I latched upon is, you know, like when my coworker Jeff, who I think is also a type 9, he, you know, he usually greets me in the morning. Like I show up first thing in the morning and he says, "Good morning, how are you?" Right? And I suppose that happens to everybody, right? But So I'll usually say, I'm fine. How are you? Right. So I started saying when I was doing this assignment, he would ask me, how are you? And I would say, I'm angry,
Oh my gosh, I
you
love
know.
it.
Um, and this is so the idea was, practicing these sort of out of character behaviors, but practicing them in a safe place, like maybe with your significant other or in a place where it's not going to be anger that's out of control. I sort of got tired of it. I was doing it for a while. Like every time he asked me how I am, I would tell him I was angry. And then I would explain to him that I was trying to get in touch with my anger, which I don't know what he thinks of that. But
Did you feel like you were getting in touch? Feel like you were just saying different words?
I feel like on some level, again, like a lower level, with my I'm rationally vocalizing something that I believe to be true, which is that I have anger simmering in me all the time. Like
Yeah.
there is anger in me all the time. And that's the thing. I've heard TJ talk about this on your podcast. Like he says he's a type 9 that never had a problem realizing that he was angry. I guess there's other type 9s that, and I get that too, but there's other type 9s that say that, I'm never angry. I don't feel angry.
Yeah.
I'm on the same page as TJ with that. Like I've always known that I'm an angry person, and like I enjoy expressing my anger in certain situations. But like I said, I did come to the fear of anger, like not letting it loose at the wrong moments. Because I feel like if I let it loose at all, then the whole torrent will come out, and I'm hosing you down with a lifetime of anger.
I think for a 9 to even express a preference or like a disagreement, this idea of like it's all going to come out is what keeps 9s from doing even those sorts of things.
Yeah. Um, I think what I notice in my own life is that sometimes it has to do with my comfort level in whatever situation I'm in. Like, when I had a certain position running a warehouse for a bunch of years, I grew to be comfortable in the authority position and keeping an eye on all the various cogs and wheels and how they were rolling and the people that were involved with it. And then, when it was my job and my duty to, it go into someone else's area and tell them what they needed to do differently. I was comfortable with it because that was my job and I knew what I was talking about. You know, I'm trying to pinpoint what the difference is when I'm not like that. Like I'd say, again, me personally, like I've always had a big like introverted aspect of my personality. I like to retreat into myself, and I'm not like a big personality in the room necessarily. So when I was younger, often I would go to parties and not want to be out there talking. I would sit by myself. I would not want to be out there and trying to be the life of the party or anything. So like it's until I have a certain comfort level, I lay in the cut, as they say, and then
But what about even in like, because I would think even in like your closest relationships, you could get more of the I'm just not going to bother because the closer relationships are maybe where more of the risk exists.
I think that's probably true with my very close relationships. It's somewhere in that middle ground where it's an arena that I'm comfortable in, but I'm maybe it's a work relationship, not a personal relationship where I might
Hmm.
be able to be more comfortable with asserting myself or displaying some degree of anger, as long as I don't let it out of control. But
Yeah.
yeah, when it's with my kids or with my wife, um, it's there's probably more thought that oh, if I bring this up, it's going to open a whole can of worms, or I have to bring this up. I have to bring this up in the right way so that they don't take it wrong and then it become offended, and like.
And this is interesting because the 6 will do that too. So I'm wondering what the fear is. If they're offended, what happens next in your mind? Like, why is that something to avoid?
Well, I don't think that it's necessarily true. Um,
Hmm.
and I think it's one of the things that the Enneagram taught me about myself that I wasn't necessarily aware of, because they say that base fear of the type 9 is a fear of loss of connection.
Hmm.
If you had asked me if I had a general fear of loss of connection before I did Enneagram work, I would be like, no, I don't give a shit. Like,
Like, what are you talking about?
right. That's not what I'm thinking about. I'm not thinking that I'm going to lose my relationship with someone, or that, but again, before Enneagram, if I frame it a little differently, like I had a relationship years ago where we never fought, and it was sort of like a mutual detente or whatever, where I didn't call her on her stuff and she didn't call me on my stuff, and we got along great for the most part. But like what I realized at the end of that relationship was that there was something super unhealthy about that, because whatever was going on was never coming to the fore to be
Right.
worked out. Like, so if she had a problem with this or that with me, she wasn't telling me, so I wasn't aware of it and I wasn't changing it, and same on my side. So like, I tried to take that to heart, in that I think that, because I don't like fighting with people, especially with people that I love, but sometimes the conflict has to happen so that whatever's going on, whatever issues can actually come out and be looked at and then be resolved. Am
Yeah.
I good at that yet? No. But like
But you understand
I
it.
am
Yeah.
aware of the value of it. Like, I j- I just did real quick. I was thinking that like sometimes I see old married couples, older than me because I feel old now too, but where they just fight with each other constantly and they seem to enjoy it. Like they bicker nonstop. Like
Totally.
customers I've had over the years or whatever, and like, and I can look at that and be like, damn, why would you want to live like that? Why would you want to be constantly sniping at each other nonstop all day long? And like, and they on some level they seem to enjoy it. That's the, or maybe they're just trapped in that pattern and don't know anything different. But I don't know what my point is with that. I mean, but it sort of shows you that people are different, because
Yeah.
I don't want to be constantly fighting about little things. At the same time, if I'm never bringing up anything, if the larger things aren't coming up, then that's not healthy.
Well, and interestingly, what might be part of your work is bringing up the small things because they're small. So it could be very difficult to make the decision to bring up something small,
Oh, but
even
that's
though
the
that might be a safer thing, right?
that's the thing. I think that the small things are brought up with the people that I'm close with.
Give me an
Like
example.
um because she might listen to it. I don't want to say anything that's going to offend my wife or something. But if she's doing something that annoys me, and there you go, that's part of the pattern right there, right? But if 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 she's doing something that annoys me, or whatever, like, I might make fun of her a little bit, or say, hey, why are you doing that? And and then she might come right back and make fun of me. like,
Which that sounds healthy enough to me, but do you dislike that? It's
no.
a little passive, right? It's a little passive,
Well, that's something
but
that
it
came up. That's something that came up recently because, like my wife pointed out to me that I was being passive aggressive to her
oh,
on something just recently, and and I was being passive aggressive, and I
did you know
realized
it at the time?
I wasn't really thinking of it specifically. No, not at all. But
So, but the
like,
fact that she said it
but when
and
she
you
point,
copped to it,
I don't even know if I copped to it verbally. I copped to it internally. I was just kind of like, yeah, shit, I was being passive aggressive. I got to stop doing that because I don't want to be that. I don't want to be passive aggressive. I want to, there's something going on. I want to tell her, but
I hear you. I also just want to mark that as like a healthy relational interaction. One person does a thing, other person is able to name it and not take it on. Other person, even internally, is like, huh, I can see that. To me, that's healthy relating. Like, I feel like so much of the time, this is a little bit of a rant I have. So just pardon me, the rant. But like the idea that relationships are supposed to not have conflict or not have things that we're working out, I think is killing relationships. I think it's a killer. So to me, I'm like, you guys are winning. There you go. What's your read on that kind of situation, though?
yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to be on the cover of Psychology Today as the healthiest couple ever in the universe or anything. But yeah, I do think that's healthy. I mean, I can even pat myself on the back for it.
Exactly.
Like number one, she's comfortable enough with me that she can tell me I'm being passive aggressive.
Yeah.
And number two, I'm open enough to it that I can be like, even if I didn't admit it to her yet, I thought about telling her later, but like,
Oh, you totally should. I co-sign
no,
that.
I will too. But like, I'm like, yeah, that was passive aggressive. She's right.
Okay,
And
so without being too disclosing of your personal life, what is it like when you are passive aggressive? What are the behaviors?
I mean, it's verbal. Um, I would say usually. I'm trying to. I can't even remember exactly what it was that I was passive aggressive about the other day. But like I did it again since then, and noticed myself in that. Hopefully this isn't disclosing too much because it's no big deal. But it's like I feel like I get stuck with walking the dog too much when I'm trying to do other stuff. So like I was sitting with my son and my wife. I would be basically being passive aggressive to both of them at the same time. But also sort of being just upfront about it, saying to my son that like, hey, like I need you to start walking the dog because I don't always have time to, and the dog needs to be walked. But at the same time, I think she mentioned it afterwards too. It made my wife feel bad because she's not walking the dog.
So is
That's
that
a
is that opposed to like a more direct way of doing that? Would just be like, "Hey, take the dog for a walk."
that was almost direct, except that
It was almost direct.
it
Good
was
job.
almost direct. And I am direct about things, and we are direct with things about each other. We have some degree of health, even though we're not on the cover of the magazine. But like,
I don't even want to know that couple on the cover, okay?
yeah,
Screw
right.
them. We're just
How
having
boring
real
is that?
life
But
marriages here. Yeah.
the reason why it's sort of passive aggressive is because my son to take on that chore is going to need firmer convincing than that. Even though it was a direct
Mm,
statement, I'm going to have to, because he doesn't want to have to pick up the poop with the plastic bag. I mean,
totally.
the
My
the
kids
poor
hate that.
the poor guy, But so I got to get him past that hump if I'm going to make him do that chore. But
But that's it right there. I think you just got to the place where it becomes more challenging.
and like it's it's something that my wife and I go back and forth with, either passively or out in the open, which, so me saying that to my son in front of her, she took, and she's not entirely wrong, as me being a bit passive aggressive to her about walking the dog. Um,
Mm, yeah, that's really good. That's
it
really good.
wasn't the worst example of passive aggression,
No.
because it was a little out in the open, and it wasn't,
Yeah.
it wasn't done with bad feeling really, but
Yeah. No, I think it's a perfect example. And those sorts of things, your awareness of it though is just really healthy. Like you can see it. You're not retreating necessarily. You're just like, "Oh yeah, I can be
it's
that way."
it's a work in progress. I mean,
Mhm.
because I think that is another thing that the Enneagram helped point out to myself, because I don't like the idea of being passive aggressive, but
Mhm.
I do see it and maybe notice it more in myself, um, since looking at that stuff with the Enneagram.
When I think of anger, I think of an internal awareness that something here matters. I think anger is the emotion that says it's like a get your attention emotion. It says, "Hey, there's something important here." So I wonder if you just go with that for a minute, if that is why nines can self forget and merge and all the things. Because if there's not a willingness to be with that energy, it's much harder to access here's what matters. I think anger and that idea are synonymous.
Yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about self-forgetting earlier, and like one pet idea of mine I was trying to formulate is, like you have those three so-called primary numbers that you're on it also,
369.
369s. I feel like the all three of them are self-forgetting within their own center. So,
Mm,
like if my, and this is nothing like some kind of a radical breakthrough or anything,
don't make
but
less of it. Be strong in your theory. I like it.
like so type 9 in the body center, um my self-forgetting is like forgetting my very being, like if like they say the thing to say to nines is you matter here. um which, I don't know if I mentioned it in this interview, my wife is a type 9 also, so that was one of the things when we started looking at Enneagram. I was reading about type 9s, and then I was noticing, my wife has already put these signs around the house that say you matter here. Like she's already on track with this, like we're already looking at this stuff, and there's a number of things that felt like that. But so, like if the body center is being and doing it and presence or whatever, like my self forgetting as a 9 is, like the fact that I even matter at all in the universe, or that, that my presence matters, or that my actions can have any effect or matter in the universe. That's the doing
Mm,
element. And then if I'm looking over at type 6, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like it seems like the type 6, where they're self forgetting, they're forgetting their own confidence and their own certainty, like
absolutely.
which is that thinking center. Like they're forgetting their own center in a similar kind of way. They're forgetting to be confident in their own thinking. That their thinking matters. And then if I look over at the type 3 is in that image center or feeling center, and they're trying to make their image match the cultural ideal or the group. They're not trusting their own image. They're making their image conform to what they think.
Yeah, is another way to say that, like, what they feel,
Right.
how
And
they
they
might present authentically doesn't matter. They forget that.
right.
Yeah. No, I think you're
Right. I mean,
right.
their
I
own
think that's really right.
motivations. I mean, they're suppressing their own feelings, from what I understand, not being a type three.
Totally.
But the way they're able to function so efficiently is by ignoring their own feelings about things. They notice other people's feelings because they're very powerful in the middle of that feeling center. They know everybody else's feelings in the room, and how to address that to get the job done. But the way they're feeling about it, they think it doesn't matter. So they think their feelings don't matter. What matters is the image they present and what they're getting done, what they're achieving. Like
So
the so it's like
totally.
don't matter all around. Like the six thinks their thinking doesn't matter.
The
You
six
know,
is so complicated though, because we think our thinking totally matters until someone's like, tell me what you think. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's got to be against
well, I
something,
mean,
right?
I think my being matters until someone makes me feel like I don't matter. Whether it's
Well,
true
and
or
someone
not.
doesn't have to make you feel that way, right? Because you come
Right.
to the party with that feeling. Yeah, exactly. That's the
But
whole
I'm
what we
saying
talked about in the beginning.
you come to the party with not trusting your own thinking, with going to someone else's.
Totally. Yeah.
And the
So
three, and I think the three maybe would have the hardest time seeing it, but they come to the party not thinking that their own feelings matter.
I don't know that they'd have the hardest. They might have the hard time seeing it, but you have the hardest time doing anything about it.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
According to your theory, what do you think?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, yeah, I don't trust my thinking, but I can figure that out. I'm also a coach, so that's, maybe not fair, but like I know what to do to shift that. Whereas I feel like in your spot, and I love your theory, it's like, well, great, I see the theory, but what could I possibly do to change that?
I mean, that's where it gets stickier, I think, because it's not like if I consistently thought that I didn't matter at all in the universe, why would I bother doing anything? And
It's a
like
great question. I think this
nines
is
nines do things, like it's not like we never do things. But what it is sort of like what I think it is sort of like a blind spot of our own essential needs or our own largest priorities, like and I can see it sometimes. It's like a nines love routines, and like sometimes I hate routines because I like being outside the box. But I've noticed as I've grown older that if I really, if I want to get something done, I have to make it a daily routine. Like if I want to institute
mm,
a change in my life, I can't just say to myself, well, I should ride my bicycle more. So when I feel like it, I'll ride my bicycle more. Then it doesn't happen. I don't feel like it, so I don't ride my bicycle more. But if I say, like, okay, after work, I'm going to ride my bicycle, and it's going to be 5 miles, and whatever, and make that a routine. Once I get used to the routine, I can do it consistently and enjoy it.
so I think you're speaking to something that, I mean, I think this is a truth for motivation is human beings, we have to act first and then the motivation comes. So I wonder, like what you said just makes total sense, right? If I can get myself to do it, then I can do it more regularly, which means you've built some internal motivation to do it.
There's a total
So
12 step parallel there. Again, I just have
go
to
bring it in.
just
Yeah, let's hear it.
just just one of the things you hear is you can't think your way into good actions. You have to act your way into good thinking. It's like the actions come first, and then
Sixes are gonna hate that. They do hate it. I know it. I work with them all the time. It's like, no, I could just keep thinking about it. And then of course, the six thinks they're doing it if they're thinking about it, which is really tricky. So, how does a nine make themselves do something that they know they want to need to do, but they don't have the motivation for yet.
This is my whole problem.
This is it. This
This is,
is
I
it.
mean, that's what I work on every day. And, like, the routine helps. Like
Mhm.
the comfort level helps. If I, if I can get myself, in a place where I feel like I know what I'm doing, and I have a certain trust that I'm safe to take my own actions, then I can
Mm.
then I can start taking my own actions better. Another one of my pet ideas, and it's again like trying to think myself out of bad thinking sometimes when I'm looking at how to do Enneagram work. So I'm careful of it, but it's like I look at that basic motivation, like, and my idea is that the type 9 motivation is for peace, and I substitute that ideal of peace, I substitute for like a narcotization or a dissociation. Like I have a taste of peace within myself. I think that's part of being in the center of the body center, in my opinion, not to get too mystical. But I
I
have
like it. I like your opinions here.
I have a taste of that inner peace that I'm really in touch with. But when I try to seek it in the real world, it's not so easily obtained. So I settle for ignoring the difficulties or ignoring the stress. It's going to be difficult to do this, or it's going to be stressful to do this, and I, that's going to disrupt my peace. So instead, I'll ignore it and hope that it works out. And I mean, that's the absolute unhealthy pattern that I fall into.
It's
Um,
so clear how you said it, though. It's just so clear how you said it. And that's very reminiscent of what I've been hearing from TJ so much. Is he just when he thinks about doing a thing, it's like it almost exhausts him to even do that much, right? It's
right.
like when I really get close to doing it, it's like, oh,
So
that
what I
already took too much.
what I try to do is have the awareness of it and do something about it. So like if I'm aware that that's what I'm doing, and I don't want to be doing that, then I try to talk myself through it. Like if I really want true inner peace, not this fake inner peace where I'm just pretending that there aren't problems. If I really want true inner peace, then I have to get out of the thinking and into the action and address the situation so that I can feel peaceful because I've addressed it and done something, and now it's settled one way or the other. Does that make any sense?
No, it makes 1,000,000% sense. And it's what I think of like a nine going to six on purpose. Right? Because when you move to 6 on purpose, it's something here matters. I mean, this is what 6 is saying all the time to the extreme, right? 6 is wrong in how many things matter. For the opposite. We need to be like a little more, maybe that doesn't matter. I think this
But
is why 9s and 6s pair up so much. But when a 9 goes to 6, it's saying, "Okay, this thing, this matters enough here for me to do something about it." So it's an uncomfortable move. But
right,
it's unavoidable for actual growth.
that's what the move to 6 is like for me as a 9, and it can be sort of to the low side or the high side.
Yeah,
And
talk about
like
that.
I have a teacher that insists she will die on the hill, that that there's no strength or stress line with those lines. But and I understand where she's coming with, because I think like I sort of agree with what Jeff and TJ said, that we can go to either line, either on the high side or the low side, depending on the situation. That's sort of what I think. But when I first started reading Enneagram, that to me, I think the default is to is for me to go to 6 in stress, and for me to reach for 3 in strength, or whatever terminology you want to insert in there. but anyway, like and I think I said it in the last interview, but Russ Hudson had a great little uh analogy for what the 9 going to 6 in stress was like, which was like if you keep hitting the sleep button on the alarm's going off. You hit the sleep button, you sleep for another 10 minutes, and then it goes off again. You hit the sleep button, and you do that 5 or 6 times, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, I only have 5 minutes left to get ready for work and jump in the car. Then you spring into action in a big panic, like, okay, I got to do this,
Yep.
I got to do that, I got to jump in the car, and that's
And everybody's like, "What's going on?"
my experience of going to 6 in stress is like that when searching for that false peace by avoiding the tasks that I needed to do. I've gotten myself incredibly behind on something and I'm about to get into trouble. I'm like, the deadline is looming, or, I put this all off too long and now I'm going to have to pay the consequences. Then all of a sudden, what I understand low side 6 to feel like, I'm in this big panic. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And then I cast about and sometimes that's the moment where I can actually get the stuff done. But I would rather be getting the stuff done in a calm and orderly fashion instead of at the last second in a half-assed fashion. Let me just finish real quick. Is just like what I tried to do, since I know that about myself and I've seen it in my personal history again and again, is when I feel myself starting to go there, is reach for the high side of 6 again. So my idea of okay, what's the high side of 6 would be like courage, right? So if I feel myself starting to go there, like stuff is starting to unravel, the deadline is looming, or the I haven't done enough work, so the project's falling apart. Let me reach for courage instead. Like what do I have to do? I have to stop ruminating and I have to stop wool gathering and I have to just jump into action, which is what the 9 always needs to do, right? So I
The
reach for
right
that.
action, because to
Yeah,
your
right
point,
action, of
nines do a
course.
lot of things. Yeah.
Right. And I can definitely be guilty of that too. I'll do what's right in front of me when that's not the most important thing. But but yeah, if I'm going to the line to 6 and it feels like it could be in stress, if I reach for courage instead and just to take the action, and again, it's like hopefully I can go to the high side of 6 a little earlier than when there's only 5 minutes left to get ready for work. You know what I mean?
What does courage feel like to you?
Courage feels like this is what needs to be done, so I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it
But,
right.
like, is there a somatic, like, can you describe it at a body level?
In a way, it's sort of just, and that's why I guess it would be the ideal that 6s are reaching for, because it sort of feels like just pushing the fear to the side.
Mm.
I don't have, it's too late. I don't have time for that fear anymore. I know what I have to do and I'm going to take the action. So I'm going to have courage. Like I I have a thing about courage with recovery. Like I used to do dangerous things when I was in active addiction,
Mhm.
and and that wasn't courage though. That was because I really did not, on a certain level, I really did not care whether I lived or died or got hurt
Mhm.
or what. Like it. I, so I was willing to do crazy things, whatever the consequences. But
Well,
I think real courage is very different than that.
I do. The way that I teach courage for sixes is not even an external behavioral thing. It's the courage to look inside and see our own resources, like what we have survived in the past. It's the courage to be like, wait a minute, I actually can handle this. I can handle what I can't see. Like, so it's a courage to go inward and sturdy oneself, which is actually what I hear you saying. It's
I
not
think that's
necessarily,
maybe a piece that I'm missing. Like I really
yeah,
like that because that fits right along with how it works for me also. Because
that
if I'm sitting there not taking the action, it's because I'm not trusting myself to take the action. You know,
that's
like
right.
it's some part of me that I'm not willing to admit or see all the time is saying that, you know, if you take that action, it may not work out, and you're better off ignoring it and not taking the action. Which
There's
9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, I am not better off ignoring it. Um,
right, but hard to remember that. The thing, Brene Brown teaches that courage, like the root word of courage is actually that it's a heart word. It's not about being like raw charging out into the world, but it's about an internal bravery to see, yeah, the resources that one has. We, in the Western world, not surprisingly, have screwed up that definition, but it's about, yeah, a brave heart, really.
that's interesting because, again, with the recent discussions I've heard on the podcast, you guys are talking about, or you were talking about Joey Shuey's book a lot, and
Mhm.
I sort of liked that. I didn't love Joey Shuey's book entirely; it's very corporate, but like I did like her attempt to say that those three quote primary types shifted the center.
Mhm.
I forget exactly how it goes, but like that resonated with me, and like the way I do Enneagram work in general is like I consider it's a model. It's not necessarily scientifically proven. It's not. It's a model
It's a framework.
that could be useful. And the reason why I put so much trust in it and so much work into it is because when I started looking at it, it resonated so true for my own life.
Yeah.
Like it seems to work. Um,
When you work it.
like exactly like the disease model of addiction that they use for recovery is not scientific either. Like
Exactly.
addiction is not really a disease like the measles or mumps.
Right.
You could stretch it and try to say it's a spiritual disease or something, but that's not really the scientific definition of a disease. But anyway, I'm
Which
going to
doesn't
teeth.
mean that that's wrong, what you just said, right? I mean,
No,
science doesn't, yeah, exactly. I agree with you.
like well, the 12 steps work for me also. They don't need to be scientific necessarily because they seem to work. But but I also don't take them as containing the whole truth of the universe. Neither
Well,
do I take the Enneagram.
this is something I think nines get, I think, more easily. I believe, I don't have any idea if this is true, but I just do think that nines have more access to spirituality the way that I see it, like as opposed to religion. I feel like nines, because the nature of nine is to be like, I can see that. I can see that. I can see that. Like there's something so beautiful in that. And to me, it's like the utter gift of nine. Like I know it is hard to be a nine who's like, yeah, so then like, what do I pick? Because I can see it all. But man, I wish more people could see it all. And like for me as a six, when I go to nine, it's like I get out of my own idea of what's right and wrong, and I can settle into a much broader framework of everything. And that feels genuinely peaceful to me. So to talk about, what's great about nine is I think you're all kind of naturally showing that to us. And that's pretty powerful.
Well, this relates to something that I thought I might want to bring up, which is like people talk about like the superpowers of the various types sometimes, right? And I love that idea, and it's really cool, and it's another thing that resonates with me. But what kills me, and I find very interesting and useful also, is that like the often the superpower comes out of the very weakness, if you know what I mean. You know, like
Paradox. That's
with
where all
with
truth lives. Yeah.
with nines, you know, like we get along with everybody. We can walk in other people's shoes, and that sort of comes out of the self-forgetting in some ways. You know, it comes out of not speaking up for ourselves. People love to talk to us. You know, people will come up and tell me their whole life story, and I barely just met them. You know, and
Totally.
I don't care about their life story. But that's because, you know, I sit there and I give them nice prompts and I say, you know, yeah, that's interesting. Oh yeah, I relate to that. Okay, cool. You know, and they walk away feeling like, you know, damn, that guy was nice. He really listened to me. You know, and I might forget 80% of what they just said. You know,
Right.
but you know, and so that's why it's interesting when you do start trying to do work, like when I assert myself. You know, when I say, okay, I'm falling into these type 9 patterns and I got to see if I can try to change myself, and I take an active step to to be like, okay, I'm going to speak my mind. You know, like, you know what, I don't agree. I think you're wrong. I think you're full of shit on that point. Then people that have known me for a while are like, what the, where did that
Mm.
come from? You know, who is this person? And then I might get a negative response from them, which pushes me right back into my stupid old pattern. But if I'm aware of it, then I can watch out for it. But you know, like it's as you
There's
like
also you could build a bridge there though, right? You could say, I have something to add here, or I have a different perspective, right? There's a bridge to build
right, and
to
I
let
do, you know,
yourself
like
be like, I'm gonna walk out on this bridge and give people an opportunity to be like, oh, let's listen to Joe in a new way.
I think some of this comes about naturally if you're growing towards some kind of a health, you know, like, you know, I'm a very different person than I was in my 20s. And you know, like I did, I've been working on myself for a couple of decades, and that's why, you know, like I think that, you know, if people are trying to figure out how to live better in the world, even if they've never read about the Enneagram, they can kind of naturally develop these things on their own. You know,
Totally.
like like so, you know, I you know, again, I'm in 12-step groups, so you know, like I have. And I believe in them and I'm active and I want to help other people recover from substance abuse. So, you
Mm,
know, like part of that is not co-signing each other's bullshit. You know, like so if someone is talking to me after a meeting and they're telling me something that sounds to me like they're trying to justify a reason to go out there and use drugs again, I'm going to tell them no, I don't agree. You know, like, no, I'm not going to sign on to that. You know, like,
so I hear you saying that, like, in that context, in that environment, it's really built for your inner wisdom, what you believe to be true, to come out in service of another person. Like, it is safe, it's expected, it's part of the setup. And that's really, really good for you as a nine.
absolutely. I mean, and I was thinking about that earlier. I mean, just coming into recovery at all in the first place, you have to get used to going to meetings and sharing in meetings, like sharing honestly in meetings. So if I share in a meeting, I have to get over myself
Hmm.
and speak out loud about what I really think is going on. And then later on, I'm doing service work. So, you know, like I'm speaking up in business meetings about the way I think things should go. I'm chairing meetings. So I'm up there at the center of the attention, you know, like being a performer, like it's almost going to type 3, you know, like
Hmm.
I'm facilitating, keeping the meeting going in a smooth way. And you know, the same thing. That's what I'm talking about. Like as we get older in our various ways, you know, like I think that if we're not descending into some kind of madness or whatever, then we're hopefully growing into some kind of maturity and maybe addressing, you know, Enneagram issues naturally. Like, but maybe studying the Enneagram can help narrow it down and focus it. But you know, like the same thing in my work, um, I I sell doors and trim for custom homes to, you know, so I go and I meet with the builder or sometimes the homeowner or sometimes the builder and the homeowner, and the framer and the GC, and I go out there and I measure their openings and I tell them, you know, look, if you're trying to achieve what you have on the plans, you need to raise the header up 2 inches, or, you know, how high is the floor going to be? And, you know, like, so I have a certain amount of expertise and I'm confident in it. And I'm directing people and saying, you know, no, you can't do what you're trying to do easily. You need to figure out a different way to do this, you know, like, just because the
And
architect,
people with conflicting ideas, maybe, right? You've got the
sure. Yeah.
homeowner and the
You got,
contractor. They need someone to be
right.
like, hey,
And the
you're,
architect who just put whatever on the plans, that's not going to work unless you do something different, you know?
I do. My husband did construction for a long, long time. So I know exactly. He's not a huge fan of architects for this reason.
Yeah. They
Okay,
they
two
catch a
things.
lot of flack.
Well, they deserve it, I feel. Okay. Of course, you would defend them, Joe. Nine. Okay.
Defend everybody. Yeah.
I know. It's lovely. So, a couple things I hear from what you're saying. Maybe, maybe a good tip for nines is find a space where your voice really does matter. Like, maybe look for where it's a more natural fit, where it's actually asked of you to speak, to be a leader. Like, that's what I'm really hearing in the things you're talking about. It's like it just does matter by the way the setup is constructed, and that makes it easier. I mean, one of the things I think all of us can do for our growth work is find places where it's a little bit easier. We don't all have to be. This is hard for me to say because I'm like a go direct kind of person. But the truth is, when we can do things where it's a little bit easier, it's just easier. And that's okay. That's okay. Because then we build the muscles that we're lacking, which is kind of what we were talking about earlier in the conversation. We have to build new muscles, not just keep using the old ones that we built in the first decades of our life that we needed. And then the second thing I heard you say was you owned your expertise. That seems really important too. You got to know,
Right.
like, I do actually have something here
And
that maybe you don't have.
it takes a while, and it sort of, you know, like, I have a belief system where you know, like, I'm never going to be a type 3 that projects absolute confidence in every decision that I make. And, you know, and
No.
maybe not all type 3s are like that entirely anyway. I don't think they are. But you know, like, I'm if I'm confident in my knowledge base, I'm going to tell them, yeah, the headers need to be 2 inches higher. If it's something that's a little more complicated, then I'm going to tell them, well, look, I think we need to do some more research on this, and I'm going to look at it and get back to you. And what do you think? What's your, you know, I'm going to try to collaborate with someone. Um,
Hmm.
and that's sort of like, again, in that workshop I've done a couple times, you look at shadow work, and it's kind of like, you know, who do you see doing what that offends you the most? Like, what do you see where you really dislike that person? And that's something that comes about in the rooms also, where it's like, I forget what the stupid phrase is, but it's like, if you're bothered by something you see in somebody else, it's usually because you have it in yourself, that kind of thing. So, you know, it's like, if I see someone being very egotistical, um, and overly confident in their own abilities or whatever, you know, like, unhumble, that that rubs me the wrong way usually. You know, look at this
So this is
blowhard.
something. This is something that 9 and 6 really, really share.
Yeah,
And
they do.
3 is our opposite in that way,
Yes.
right? We should
Yes.
have that conversation with the 3 because that is fascinating. It tells you and me that we need to get better at owning our what we're good at. Like, it just does. Because
Right.
everything you just said points to we need to be standing more firmly in what we believe, what we know to be true. And threes need to, yeah, do other things a little bit. So I recently heard Suzanne Stabile say for this a second time. I heard her say it recently, and I heard her say it like 7 years ago when I first did one of her workshops that sixes and nines need to start speaking up more because we're needed. And what I wish she would start saying is everybody else needs to
Shut the fuck up.
shut the fuck up, and start listening to your sixes and nines. I think it would be a really big improvement on that statement. It's like, we're willing to talk. People don't want to listen.
Right.
So, yes. But clearly, that is both of our work to some degree is to this sort of false ego of the being humble. It's like a
Right.
shadow ego-y thing where we're like, "Oh, look at that person."
Well,
But really, we're
it's
doing it. We just do it internally in secret.
the example I think of is, like years and years ago, I had a kind of psychopathic boss. I don't think he was a type 3. I think my guess would be he was a type 8, maybe. Could be wrong. But
Or a six.
no, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
We can
But
get real. Yep. Yep. Yep.
but he was real egotistical, and like, and come to find out later he was like bipolar also, but that's besides the
Mm,
point. But
maybe
he
not six then. Yeah, you're right.
but he was he was a real tough personality for me to deal with. However, the thing that I felt about with him is that he had this big ego about everything that he was doing, and it was doors because that's my business. But the thing was, he knew how to build anything from scratch. Like his ego was backed up. That's what my point is. It doesn't
Mhm.
it doesn't change the fact that he was a complete jerk, but he wasn't bluffing either. You know what I mean? He
Mhm.
was really good at what he did. And he could like in 5 seconds flat tell you how anything could be built, and what the weight would be, and like he basically grew up in the business and had a lot of knowledge. So
And
he
also was an ass.
and also was an ass about it. So yeah, no, he shouldn't have been an ass about it. But that to me is a lot different than someone who presents themselves as knowing it all and being the best that there possibly is, when meanwhile they're full of shit and they're not actually very good at what they do. You know what I mean? This is a
Totally.
big difference to me, and humility. This is a good point too. Like humility, and again, like the understanding I came from doing step work. I came to from doing step work is humility is not just admitting my faults. It's also not hiding my assets. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Humility is
Yes.
about the full truth.
Yeah.
Humility is presenting myself as I am. Yes, I have faults, but I'm also really fucking good at some things. So,
Exactly. I could not agree more. Totally. And sometimes that can be off putting to other people, and that's not about us. That's what I think. There's something in there for both six and nine. Like I
yeah,
can be my whole self, and someone else might not like me. I'm just not for everybody.
yeah.
We
I
have
think
different
that's
reasons for
it's how
avoiding
other
that.
people perceive me is a much bigger part of the picture than I would like to admit sometimes.
High five.
And
Solidarity.
that's something that again, like I didn't know about myself until I did step work and worked with Enneagram, both of them.
Yeah.
Like it makes I don't want people to think that I'm full of myself or that, like I have an inflated ego.
Right.
Um,
But those
so
are the things that mostly bother us.
right, and I think that, and maybe I'm fooling myself, but I think that a type 9 can assert themselves in the world and excel and, own what's good about themselves in a type 9 way without presenting, a false egotism.
Well, and maybe
That's
even to some people, it does come across as false. The point is, if it's not false to you,
right.
that's what matters. And I'm just gonna, I'm sorry to do this, but I really think it comes back to owning your anger because the anger is gonna say, hey, I matter here. That is the emotion that's gonna help buoy what you just said. I'm gonna die on that hill, Joe. I don't care
I'm not
what you think.
arguing with you. I ain't mad at you.
Yeah, it's just it's an energy. It's one of the, because I work with sixes who are very comfortable with anger, and I work with sixes who cannot touch it with a 10-foot pole. They seem way more nine-ish, and it's the same kind of work. Like it's in their shadow.
Oh, it's interesting. I see it sometimes, and I think with like when I did Enneagram, like I looked back at some of my closest relationships from when I was younger, and like I remember one guy in particular who I think was a type 8, and I've seen it with other people that I thought were type 8s, and it's like sometimes it might be 6 also, but sometimes people want to get the reaction out of me, so they will poke and poke and poke, and it's
Oh
like
man.
it's like once once I kick back, once I meet them in that space, and sometimes like I might totally lose my cool, like I'm trying to avoid. Other times I might be
Hmm.
able to other times I might be able to stay calm and just be like, yeah, let's go, let's talk about this, and I'll defend my position. But
Mm.
it's so funny. Sometimes people like I'm not working well with them at all. I'm not getting along with them at all. And once they see that they can push me to that confrontation and that I will have the confrontation with them, then all of a sudden everything's smooth and perfect.
Mhm.
It's just the way other types work. They need to see that I will defend my position.
I
Um
think that's really accurate because I know as a six, I need to find someone's solidity or I don't. I right? Like I need to know that there's something there. And that's where I can get really tripped up with nines. I'm just like, I don't think you're telling me anything which really bothers me.
mm,
And so, like, yeah, I do not feel comfortable in a space where someone's like, it's all fine. I'm like, no, like, I
mhm,
want to know what's real in my
right.
mind, right? This is all just made up 60 stuff. But like, yeah, that's where I go sideways with nine.
Well, I mean
I'm just like,
that surprises me a little bit with nines, because the way I see nines, I want that authenticity all the time, and
from
that's what
others,
from others, exactly, and I want to give it myself also, like
but will you?
well, it's food for thought. Like
Mm,
if I'm shying away from, because whatever fear or avoidance of anger or avoidance of conflict, then I'm not presenting myself authentically, and there it is again. I'm going for the false piece instead of doing the work to get to some kind of a true piece. And
yeah,
in this sense, in a real relationship with other people, but
yeah.
but but yeah, I mean that's what I want. I need to see that people are honest and well intentioned. You know what I mean? Like I
For you to actually want to be in relationship with them. Like you
exactly.
could be in a, kind of quasi
Yeah,
relationship with anyone.
I could work with them, but
Totally.
if I'm gonna trust you, if I'm gonna respect you, if I'm gonna like really want you as a friend, I need to see that you are authentic. and honest
Yeah.
and well intentioned, you know.
Right. Right. Yeah, there's just a lot of overlap for 6 and 9, and yet they're so distinctly different because the motivations are so different.
Well, that's another thing that I've thought about with the work, and this is maybe far out there and not workable, work that's not workable. But is because I wonder if I can look at switching my motivations, if that will help. So like if I, like I'm always going to be in type 9 space, but like I try to look at, like despite some people's misgivings about wings, I'm sort of with Hudson and Riso in that, like wings are very close to us. So like I sort of I can reach to type 8 and type 1 and what I share with them and try to draw on that to give me strength with my type 9 issues. And then like we were talking about with going down the line to type 6, or again, like I did, it's it's kind of it's kind of harder to feel viscerally, but I definitely feel the line to type 3 also.
Mhm.
So like the idea is I go down that line to type 6, I grab that courage, and then I go back to my type 9 problems, or I go down the line to type 3, and like I grab that confidence and that ability to take action, and I go back up the line to type 9. So I guess just one of the things I was wondering is if again,
I
looking at
don't
if the Enneagram is all about motivation, and like that's what I'm doing, looking at, like I'm motivated by true peace or false peace. Like
mm,
I am also motivated by perfection, or I am also motivated by passion or lust for life, like the type 8.
mm,
I am also motivated by security. Everybody's motivated by security, and I am also
everybody's motivated by
motivated by
security.
certainty. Like, and I am motivated by, what is the 3 motivated by? I'm motivated by, like,
Like, who knows?
yeah,
Just kidding.
I want to be there sometimes, but
Winning the
like
room, I know.
I am motivated by achieving things, to
Yeah, yeah.
achieve things and to be seen achieving things, and and to have people appreciate my merits.
I think what you're describing is not work that's not workable. I think you're describing a more truthy kind of thing, which is we're gonna have a default, but of course, we have the capacity to try on different things and to spend time in different motivations. It may never be our default,
Right.
but to be a whole, complete human means we have access to all of these different things.
Right. So it's just something I had the idea to try. Like
Totally.
in Enneagram work, like we're supposed to be looking at, at least by some schools, we're supposed to be looking at integrating all 3 centers, right? Like
Yeah.
so in my life, I try to have like I try to have a body doing intuitive connection in my life, and I try to have a rational thinking connection in my life, and I try to figure out what the hell is going on with my emotions, like and actually, like work with them truthfully.
Mhm.
Same thing, if and I kind of hate looking at the instincts, but if I'm looking at the instincts, I'm trying to bring up self-preservation, or well, self-preservation is what I am. I'm trying to bring up my repressed instinct and lean
Mhm.
into that more to try to be more balanced. So maybe just a cheat code, or just a guideline, if if I'm consciously looking, okay, like my situation at this moment is requiring me to perform and show my image and make sure that people are seeing my merits, say, like in a type 3. So maybe like if that's my goal, maybe I should try to just consciously look at that motivation in myself
Mhm.
and see if I can behave like a type 3 for this situation for a second. But it's always going to come, I believe, it's always going to come from my hopefully higher type 9 motives.
Totally. Well, then I also think we try to do a thing and then we just explore. We get curious. What was that like? What was scary? What did I actually get out of that? Like we do a thing and then we take it back in and do more inner work to just get to know ourselves better. Like to me, that's honestly the whole point. Is like I get to know myself so much better. And then I'm so much more free to just freaking be a whole human, which to me is my personal goal. Like I just want to be more free to be me and not be quite so checking of all the things, right? So
Yeah.
I try a thing, I go back in and I'm like, okay, how was that? What was that like? What was hard about it? And, just keep going forever.
It's it's ironic maybe, like as I get older and I'm dealing with some physical health issues lately,
Mm,
like in one sense, I feel like I'm more on track than I have been. Like I'm really on track for some things, like I'm dealing with life better. I'm pushing into spaces that used to thwart me. But, then at the same time, driving me back to my type 9 complacency, I'm like, God damn, this work is too much work. I'm tired, like
yeah.
I'm tired of struggling against myself and I'm tired of struggling against the rest of the world. Can I just
Yes.
can I just sit back and enjoy where I've gotten to for a moment? But I can't because there's problems. That's life, I guess.
Mm,
I gotta let this dog in. I'm listening.
yeah, that really is life, I guess. It's so true. And there's something about accepting that life is never stagnant. That is
We
really important.
and we wouldn't want it to be, like
Well,
if all our I would like to rest for a minute, sure, but like if when I studied philosophy, like I read Rousseau at one point, which is not a guy that people still study that much. Somewhere in his work, he was talking about the concept of desire, and it's like if we don't have a lack that we're trying to fill, if we don't have a motivation, Enneagram's all about motivation, right? Then where are we? I mean, it's like that's the first question I heard in philosophy is would you rather be a pig satisfied or Socrates dissatisfied?
mm.
You know what I mean? And nothing against pigs, but like
I'd
if you're
rather be Socrates in the morning and then about 6 p.m.
right, there you go.
I want to do the pig. That is my daily most, that is basically me.
There you go. But I'm just
That's
saying
it.
like I try
That's
to
the secret
remember
to life.
to be grateful for all the challenges because without the challenges
Mm,
where would the growth be, like where would I be?
seriously.
If life was just spoon fed to me, how boring would that be? Because like I love sitting around and watching Netflix or whatever and eating cheese puffs. But
Mm,
if my job was to sit around and watch Netflix 10 hours a day and eat cheese puffs only,
it wouldn't work.
after about 2 weeks, I would be really upset.
2 weeks.
Like if I made it that far, I don't
I
know.
was going to say, I got about it. 2 days of that.
Yeah,
Then I'm at least going to need a vegetable. I could still stay in front of the TV. Okay, this is great. This is wonderful. This was so much better than our first conversation, I feel like. I'm so glad we got to do it again.
yeah, me too.
Yeah, this is awesome. Okay, you gave me a lot to think about.
Good.
Nines are wonderful, as long as you can get them to tell you, get going on what they really think about things.
Yeah,
Nines are the most, other than myself and some sixes I know, nines I find are, they seem to be so well read and like they've consumed so much content. And I'm like, yeah, people do need to listen to the nines because they really do have so much. going on in there. It's
I,
really, and I know that's not all nines, but obviously the ones I'm contacting are Enneagram informed, so they're less they're interested in this
I,
type of
I,
thing, but
I'm a big reader, and I always have been. So is my wife. But like it's funny because I look at it sometimes like my past study habits and my present study habits, and I think there's a real type 9 pattern in there too. Because like when I used to have to write a philosophy paper, I would go to the secondary sources and I would read like 10 people's different opinions. Like before
wow.
I before I'm going to, write a paper, addressing my opinion on this
Uh-huh.
weighty subject, whatever the hell it happened to be, then I'm gonna see what all the best people wrote about on the opposing views first, which
Mhm.
it's kind of admirable in a way, but it's also very time consuming and confusing when you try to do it that way.
Mm.
It's like that trying to see it from everybody's point of view thing. Um,
Mhm.
and when maybe it would be better if I just followed my gut for a second and worked on my point of view. But like I do the same thing with Enneagram. I hold the Enneagram at arm's distance, and like I want to read all the schools before I decide. But then like because I'm trying to absorb everything at once from osmosis, then
Mhm.
when I want to make a point, because my brain isn't as my brain isn't as good as I would like it to be. I can't call up the point that I wanted to make necessarily
Mm.
because I have 20 different Enneagram books trying to float around in my head, none of which I took notes on, or what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just food for thought. Like I try to watch out for that. It's not always good to try to see the whole picture.
Mm.
Sometimes it's good to just pick a spot and stand there. Like if uh, if you don't stand for anything, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything, right? Like,
Totally. I hate that, by the way. You're that truth. I hate it so much. I'm like,
yeah,
"No." I think it's true, though. Yeah,
yeah, it is, but it's
I
also
know it
hard.
is. Yeah, I'm not a fan. So that's something I also have to work on.
I feel like I was
Okay.
going to say something else, but I forget.
Should we wait a minute?
No, I
Are
mean
you
it could be
sure?
an hour. It could be next week.
You can message me.
It could never happen.
Oh, that's sad. That's sad. Okay, this was great, though. You said a lot. You said a lot.
Okay,
I
good.
I feel, I hope that Joe, yeah, spoke because there was good stuff. You said a lot of good stuff.
Thank you. You too.
Look forward to the recording. We're gonna do it. Season 2 is coming out, and you're gonna be first.
Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah, I
I
want to
know.
hear. I want to hear comments. I I
Yeah.
I I mean, like I said at the beginning, I like the idea. I want to hear practical ideas for people to work on themselves. I know there's other people out there like me. We're not just listening to the Enneagram because it's interesting. We're listening to the Enneagram because we want to change, because we
I
want to.
mean, I work with a lot of people. I think that's sometimes true.
I mean, maybe
I think a lot of people are using the Enneagram to find themselves, you know? Like, I don't think everyone is using it to change, which is fine. I tell myself it's fine. I have to say this to myself over and over and over, like, people are gonna do whatever they're gonna do with it. But I think a lot of people who don't have a sense of their own identity are trying to find themselves in it. So there's lots of ways
I
people
get
use
that,
it.
and I mean, I think there's merit to that also. I mean, you
Yeah,
you you need to be able to see yourself before you even know what you might want to change. You need to be able to
totally.
you need to be able to see yourself and how you work. I mean, the problem I would see is if people are are using it to just justify themselves staying the same, you know?
Yep. That's the other thing. People are
Sure, they always do, right?
That's right. That's exactly right. And we do it too sometimes. So,
Sure. Yes.
but listen to your sixes and nines. That's our final answer. Although non sixes and nines quit listening a long time ago. So it's just
Right.
us here now.
They gave me a chance to talk and I took too long. So it's too late. They're done with me.
Oh, that's amazing. All right, Joe. You're great.
All right.
Glad to know you. We'll talk soon.
All right, thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.